All right.
All right.
So a little earlier than 5:30.
Yep, but that's okay.
But later than the 5 o'clock we'd planned on.
Yep.
So, welcome back to Sprague-Brewer Homestead. I'm Nikki.
I'm Kanan.
And we are coming from the frozen Pacific Northwest.
Yes, yes.
I think we hit, 28 today?
Yep, big high of 28. It was cold all day.
It has snowed. It's been windy. They did say like 10 to 20 mile an hour winds with gusts up to like 30, 35. So we will we'll take the fact that it's not doing that. In fact, right now the wind's like 1 to 2, so not bad at all. So yeah, I guess what's been going on around here in the last 2 weeks? Pretty much just survival. You don't get a whole lot accomplished this time of year. We did have some 50-degree weather. So Kanan's been working on some car stuff. I've been doing a little bit of all sorts of stuff. If you hear a weird gravelly noise, it's one of the dogs eating. I started a few seeds, just playing with some pots, nothing major. I'm going to hopefully get my onions started. Not this weekend, because I'm out of town this weekend, but somewhere in the next week, maybe even tomorrow, because we're, again, another high of 28, which is no fun. Surprisingly, not as much frozen this morning as I expected. Like the water bottles in the rabbit barns were still pretty good. Everybody's just cranky. You know, the barns are not as clean as they could be because everything's frozen. It's hard to scoop stuff that's frozen. It's hard to get out to the manure pile to dump carts because everything's frozen. So just the normal February stuff. It just feels like it's been more irritating because it's been frozen for so long. We got snow and freezing way early this year. So anything else? Any other updates?
I don't think so. I mean, it's just been, like you said, survival. It's just, you know, we're trying to manage the last of our winter resources. We have a limited amount of firewoods. We're trying to decide, do we need to go cut more firewood just to make it through? Because these 50-degree days give you that little bit of hope that spring is right around the corner and you can stop using the fireplace. But then you get up in the morning and the house is 55 or 54 degrees and you go, yep, better get that fire going.
We did good on hay, and one good thing is we got that little bit of 50-degree weather. I finally got some rabbits to breed. Finally. Not as many as I'd like, and not any of my martins, which has been really frustrating, but we'll see how that's going to go. A girlfriend told me today that she has purchased some martins that we're picking up at the show this weekend. So I will be up in Stevenson, Washington on Saturday at the fairgrounds doing a rabbit show. The first one I've done since convention in October, and I have nothing to show. my best magpie Harlequin buck, apparently when we were breeding him last week, got tagged in a testicle and has a massive bite wound that I did not see at the time. It is healing, but unfortunately that bumps him out from showing this weekend, which is kind of a bummer deal. And his sister just barely was not at weight. So yeah, it's been interesting. So I haven't had litters since like last summer. So I had no juniors to show. My seniors are pretty limited. I am actually dragging out a 4-year-old buck to show, which is in most people's opinion pretty darn old for a rabbit show. But he looks good. His fur is good, so I'm gonna roll with it. So we're trying not to complain too much. I've got a friend who lives in Missoula, and they were negative 15 this morning. So we were at least on the positive side.
Yeah.
And we'll probably still be on the positive side come tomorrow morning. So, well, that's all the updates I have. There's not a whole lot else going on.
No, not really.
So let's get into it. For people who don't know, well, let me back up a little bit. For people that have been doing the whole homesteading farming thing for a while, you probably know that a couple of years ago, they pulled a lot of the terramycin and oral antibiotic products off the shelf. So you can still get terramycin, which is a water-soluble antibiotic. Super handy if you've got funk in your chickens or to dose for rabbits, because it's one of the few oral antibiotics that rabbits don't get diarrhea and have problems with. So they pulled that off the market a few years ago, and I can't even remember how long. It's been 3 or 4 years anyway. And we all kind of complained about it, but we were like, well, they've left the rest of it, right? And the argument at the time when they pulled some of that off was that the oral antibiotics were so easy to use that they felt they were being overused. And I can agree with this, right? Because if anyone's ever read the Stories Guide to Raising Rabbits that Bob Bennett wrote years and years and years ago, I don't know if Bob's even still alive. But anyway, he was a tan breeder who was really big on pushing the idea of antibiotics every single month to keep your herd at optimal health, which I thought was a really, as much as I love the book in general, I thought was a gross overuse of pharmaceuticals. I'm a big believer that you don't medicate something that doesn't need it. So Bob was a real proponent of this, which was kind of irritating. A lot of people tried to do it, which I think didn't help and kind of has led to some of these bans. I'm not saying Bob in general, like poultry people were doing it too. They were mixing up a batch of antibiotics every month, which I thought was kind of gross, but not a big fan of antibiotics in my meat and my eggs, personally. So anyway, we all kind of grumbled, but most of us big breeders or people who have been on a farm for a long time were like, we've still got the injectables, and most of us aren't afraid of an injection. I prefer injectables. I know exactly what my animals are getting, and I can control that. So naturally, now they've come for the injectables. So in June of this year, everything that they haven't taken away already goes away. So you will not be able to buy Penji over the counter. That includes topical Penji, which I'll get to in a minute, because it's labeled as an intermammary. So it's the big thing that most people use is the oxytetracycline, which is like LA200, Duramycin's got one, Biomycin's got one. Those are all going away, and the Penji. That's the bigger stuff that most of us use. It's what is most readily available at feed stores. Kanan's got a whole list of them, but anyway, those are the big.
I do.
Those are the ones that you buy the most. So what's going to end up happening is the only way you can get antibiotics from here on out is going to be to get them from your veterinarian. What the law says, or said when it first came out, was that if you have a good relationship with your veterinarian can basically give you a script, a prescription to go get it. And any farm store can fill it. Well, look, no farm stores are stocking it anymore. Nobody. Because they're not going to get the turnover fast enough if they're relying on prescriptions. Not only that, but there's a lot of other paperwork that has to be filed if you're going to start accepting prescriptions. So most feed stores are not going to fool with it. They're just not. So, on top of this, because I can hear wheels turning where people are like, oh, I'll stock up now. You're too late. You're too late. You can still get some LA200 and a lot of your oxytetracycline products you can still find. Like I can still get some at the stores. But Penji, forget it. So you had a whole problem, I guess, from what 2 different feed stores and a online livestock company has told me, is for some reason in 2022, there was a shortage of penicillin. So that caused a lot of stores to run out. They've kind of backlogged. And now they've just kind of gotten to a point where they've pretty much said, well, we'll have enough for the medical industry and the veterinary industry, but we're not going to bother with the feed stores. So you can't buy it anywhere. Stores have exactly what they have, and that's what they've got. So what this means for us small producers is if you have a problem that you used to be able to pop down to the store and buy a $15 vial of penicillin for, you can't do that anymore. You're not going to be able to do that anymore. If you have a veterinarian that you've worked with, that you pop into the vet office and they feel comfortable with, they may sell it to you. They may choose not to, without a actual veterinary appointment and them actually going through and looking at the animal. They may not sell it to you. That is their right as a veterinarian. So you're not going to be able to get it anymore. You can only keep some things for so long. And like, I have some extra LA200 and some extra Duromycin. It's good to have, but it's got a shelf life. And some things you can kind of push past, some things you can't. Duromycin in particular, if it is stored correctly and closed and not opened, it will go. And this is what I was told by 2 different people at feed stores. So take that for what it's worth. It will go a couple years past expiration. But you need to know that oxytetracycline in particular, on the bottle even says 60 days discard from the time that it's opened. And that means the first time you puncture that top rubber seal, that's it. You've got 60 days. And I can tell you from having dealt with Bordetella in my rabbits a couple years ago, this is what you use in Bordetella cases. By the time you get 30 days into it, it's turning colors. So it's not going to make it 60 days. Penicillin, I have always heard, is wildly variant. Like sometimes you've got a 60-day discard from the time you've punctured it. Sometimes it will last a while. The big thing if you're storing penicillin is you've got to take it out at least once a month and, basically swish around. Otherwise, it basically sludges at the bottom and it won't come back up. So if you don't have Duromycin and it's something that you need, oxytetracycline, it's worth having on hand. The thing that's crazy is you're still going to be able to get needles and syringes because they are still, at this time, you still buy injectable vitamins like vitamin B complex and that kind of stuff, and your ivermectins. You should know that they are working on a bill to do away with ivermectin. We can think the whole deal of what happened with COVID and it's bad, it's evil, it's not, whatever. But they are now trying to restrict that as well. And that'll really be a big deal. From a rabbit person perspective, this is affecting us all the way around, is penicillin is the only thing you can treat vet disease with, which is rabbit syphilis, which I had never gotten before. And somewhere along the way, we've picked it up at a show. So we had 3 animals come down with it. And while I was trying to get a penicillin product from anywhere, the only vet in town that would even talk to me wanted to charge me just over $100 for the exam. Then there was testing. Then there was prescriptions. And they like to give oral penicillin, which is a no-fly in rabbits whatsoever. I learned this the hard way early on, killed some rabbits with it. So yeah, I couldn't even, and they would not give me enough drugs for every rabbit that was affected. They were only going to sell me enough drugs for the one rabbit that I could take in. So I was looking at like a $500 vet bill, trying to get a very curable, very easy to cure, if you have PenG illness, under control. And in the meantime, we lost a doe to it because it will kill. If they go off feed, they can actually die. So lost a really nice doe. Finally found some topical PenG, which is also going away. And the reason that's going away is topical PenG is actually considered intermammary. I hope I'm saying that right. And it's made for cattle. So if you get mastitis or anything that PenG will control in the udder, you actually open up your teat orifice and put it in and inject it in. So it's been exciting because that was all I could get. So I did treat the rabbits with it. It did work. It is a huge pain. You have to turn them over, expose the genitals so that you can get to the mucous membranes. And there is no dosage online. I have looked everywhere, emailed the company. couldn't come up with anything. So literally, I just went off the cattle dosage, figured a little dab will do ya, and kind of wiped it in there and made it work. I did finally find some injectable penicillin. They required a 2 vial minimum and an overnight delivery because it has to be on cooler packs. So I basically got 2 vials of Pen-G, which should be about $15 a piece, for the low price of $100 by the time it was all said and done, because I was not confident in how the topical Pen-G was going to work. It does seem to be doing what it needs to do. And I'm probably going to buy an extra one of those to keep on hand, because that will stay good for a while. No other products will work for vent disease. So it's something to keep in mind, rabbit people. Like I said, the oxytetracyclines are good for a lot of things, respiratory illnesses, wounds, that kind of stuff. I know some people like to buy the fish mox, which is amoxicillin. This has been a big thing in the prepper community for the last few years of, well, just buy the fish mox, and you can actually, there are calculators online. You can actually figure out how to dose people with it. That too is going away. It's not something that we can use in rabbits anyway. Amoxicillin kills all the gut bacteria and will kill a rabbit stone cold dead in less than 24 hours generally. So that we can't use that either. So I don't have any. I'm not going to stock any. There's no reason to. It's one of those things, you don't use drugs very often, but when you need them, you need them. So the reason they're saying that this is all happening, believe it or not, and I think this is an absolute load of horse crap. He's listened to me being very passionately upset about a lot of this for months. It's supposed to guard integrity of meat and keep antibiotics out of the meat supply, right? So on paper, that sounds really good, right? None of us want antibiotics in our meat. That's nasty stuff. That's why a lot of us grow homegrown stuff. But look, it's not going to stop the big producers. It's not, the bulk of who's producing the meat can still get the drugs. I don't know a single cattleman in my area that doesn't have a vet that they use for whatever. So they're still going to be able to call that vet and say, I need penicillin or whatever, and they're still going to get it. But it's people like me and, other people that I know that have, rabbits or chickens. It used to be you could put a little terramycin in the water for chickens, knock stuff right out, or, nasty wounds. You could give them a little shot of this or that. You could flush wounds with penicillin in poultry. You can't do that anymore. You're not going to be able to do it. So unless you've got a vet that you know really well that wants to give you the ability to buy medication without veterinary inspection or exam, you're screwed, basically. I don't know how else to put it. He's been very quiet as I did my rant. So
no, I'll take it from the opposite side here, because I did a lot of reading this morning trying to get prepared for this. So let's go back to the 1940s.
Oh my God, you did go back. I'm going to read through this while you're doing that.
You can read through that. So let me tell you how this all came about.
Or how they say it's coming about.
Whatever. So I did some Googling today. And so apparently back in the 1940s, it was identified that if you treat commercial livestock with penicillin regularly, they tend to grow better. They grow faster, they grow healthier, they put on more weight, more meat, more muscle. So every farmer that got wind of this started treating everything, whether they needed it or not, started treating it with penicillin, because it would grow your cattle faster, it would grow your pigs faster, it would grow your sheep faster.
Which was not actually the truth, because I remember reading studies about this when I was in ag class back in, oh God, I'm going to date myself, but in high school in the 90s. And what they actually determined later on, I'm not saying you're wrong, but the study I remember them talking about is what they figured out is if you took away all the underlying health issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
you could hit maximum growth. And that was really what it wasn't so much that it boosted muscle or anything else, but it put the system on a maximum, whatever. Anyway, continue.
Right. So it helped a challenge systems, if you want to call it that, right? Because most livestock are not grown in optimum conditions. We all can probably say definitely so. There's whatever you want to call it. So the penicillin helped band-aid that situation and get everything kind of drugged up and to the optimum situation. So going forward along, we get into the 70s and 80s and 90s, and foreign countries, the EU starts banning all this stuff. So the US says that it's not going to take the chance to doing that unless it's been proven. Well, finally, that's where they've come into it now, and they've given up the show us the evidence or we're not going to do it. They've followed along and said, well, we realize that treating everything of commercial livestock or commercial feed, treating it with antibiotics, whether that needed it or not, as you're treating it ahead of time. I can't think of the word I'm thinking of.
Preventative.
That's the one I wanted right there. Preventative.
I had to think about it for a minute too. As a preventative, yes.
Treating it as a preventative, whether you need it or not, right? It's like giving yourself, vitamin B shots, whether you need it or not. They determined that was translating over and was showing up in the meat. And then you're starting to get people that were developing bacteria, and especially bacteria in the meat that was
antibiotic resistant.
Resistant. That's where it was translating over. So now they're realizing that they were allowing commercial entities to give antibiotics to livestock, which was then translating over into the meat people were eating that was having antibiotic. It was translating over. And then you were starting to get people sick because they were ingesting meat that didn't allow them to deal with the bacteria naturally.
Right. But again, what do we know about this? This wasn't the small farmer in his backyard.
It's
never been about us. It has always been about the big producers.
Yes.
And then this is what, quite frankly, pisses me off about this whole thing is we keep getting the pinch over stuff that's not our fault. Nobody I know. Look, antibiotics are expensive. None of us are using them unless we need them. I mean, that's ridiculous. But we do livestock that, one, finding a vet that can do anything with them. I have raised llamas since the 90s. We were very fortunate when we moved to Central Oregon that we found a vet who was very honest that he knew nothing, but he was willing to do anything. So he would call Ohio State and Auburn and some of these places that were doing llama programs and would figure out the care necessary because he had no idea. How many veterinarians do this? The number of vets that will treat rabbits and then prescribe something that is potentially fatal, oral penicillin being one of them, amoxicillin being the other, and send him home is ridiculous. I don't have a problem with vets, but look, my goats and my rabbits are not things that they see mainstream. For that matter, neither are llamas anymore. So they don't know the care. And they don't, unfortunately, we live in a time where they don't listen either. So you can go in as an owner and say, look, I've got books and I've got information that says this is the care that I need and this is what it is. And they will look right at you and go, I don't think so. Because I had this when I lived in Tennessee where we lost some animals because the vet flat out wouldn't listen to me.
Right.
After like the third one died, then he was like, I found a study online and I think you might be right. Well, great. That didn't bring anybody back to life. And it was drugs at the time that I couldn't buy over the counter either.
Right.
So, as usual, we're going to get punished for this. But anyway, you can continue with
that was it. That's the whole backstory. I mean, it's not like it's.
And they haven't allowed penicillin commercially in meats. Like they test for this in a long time. I grew up with a friend that was a dairy farmer. And for some reason, you see people run on and on at the mouth about dairy's overuse of antibiotics. Look, most of them don't. It's expensive. I don't know how many people know the dosage for most things on a cow, but even though penicillin's pretty cheap, it adds up. I mean, a cow will take a lot of antibiotics. So they don't use it unless they have to. Some places do. Look, feedlots are notorious for this kind of stuff because you have animals in a really bad condition, in a really bad environment, in an unnatural environment, and they get respiratory funk and all this other crap. And they do need more drugs because people are shortcutting it and trying to force them through the system.
Right, it's band-aiding it.
But those people can still get it. It's just you and me that can't.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read through some of these real quick while you're talking.
Go ahead. So the interesting thing, and I was reading this today when I was doing my research, and I'll just call it research, but I was reading a lot of stuff. And so I remember back in, I want to say the 90s and 2000s. And if you remember back, go way back in your mind and think back to marketing, right? You had a lot of chicken companies. You had Tyson, you had Purdue. I'm just trying to think of chicken companies there. They started coming out with we're antibiotic, meats, and you still see it on packaging now that they were going on about how they never put antibiotics in their meat. I guess I saw the advertising, but I never cared what was the background to it. It's like, great, you don't put antibiotics in the water. You don't do this. Well, this is where it was really starting to shift to where commercial livestock was starting to get pulled out, where they weren't going to, basically give them antibiotics, whether they need it or not. They were just going to do it as a prevention or basically a Band-Aid. But you started to see companies start to tout that they didn't use antibiotics in any of their meats and etc. And people started to really, flock to those brands. It's kind of like the organic thing we talked about last night of where we go organic. People flock to that marketing, even though they have no idea what the term actually means or what it translates to.
Well, yeah, the antibiotic thing has been big because they've been touting that, there's no antibiotics in our meat. And, well, okay, look, they test by huge sample sizes. So if there is one or two getting through? Yeah, probably. But overall, federally, the use of antibiotics in meat animals intended for slaughter and public consumption is not allowed. Hasn't been allowed for a long time. I just called the OSU today to figure out their program just in case. Trust vet students more than vets. I don't argue with that. I tend to think vet students listen a little bit more because they're trying to learn. The big thing here is that we're going to run into this situation where who's going to treat the animals that we need? Like if you call a vet and you say, I've got a cow, if you're in we're in a rural area, they can treat cows. They understand cows or horse or pigs because we have a big pig market here. But there is nobody in my town or our nearest town that will talk to you about a sheep or goat. And they'll take them in on an emergency and they'll prescribe stuff, but they very seldom actually know what is going on. They just don't deal with them. And you know why? Because most of us small animal breeders, and goat, sheep are usually kind of included in this, we handle our business ourselves. Well, now they're taking away our ability to handle our business ourselves. And I'm not one for conspiracies and, everybody's out to get me.
No, we're just that small
but
percentage of the market.
Right.
Whether it's veterinary or food or anything else, we're that very small market that is affected, where the large percent is what they're going after. They're taking the big swath out of the big commercial production.
They think.
Well, yeah, they think they are, but that's the intent from policymakers. That's the intent, is to take that.
I'm not sure I even believe that anymore. I am starting to become one of these people who honestly is starting to believe that the folks that think that they are trying to take our ability to grow meat in our backyard away from us by running us out any way possible. Feed is getting expensive. We did the video a couple weeks ago. I don't believe that it was a conspiracy to taint chicken feed or anything else, but we keep getting nibbled at. And now there are there are actually places where they are trying to take away your ability to produce and drink your own raw milk, to butcher your own livestock in your backyard because it might be tainted. Look, I don't know too many people who have ever butchered anything in their backyard and got sick from it. I never have.
Yeah.
You know, I raw dairy last year. None of us got sick. I think a lot of us are even more particular about what we're doing because we are feeding our own families. You know, like when I'm dressing out a chicken, I'm thinking this is going to my family. I'm going to do a nice job. I'm making sure I'm not getting contamination because it's feeding me. I know where it's going.
Right.
You know?
But that's the same point of what you put into them too. That you don't
Right.
necessarily have to like, I'm going to buy only organic feed, but you're going to buy good feed. You know, you're not going to over give them antibiotics on the front end unless you really feel like there's a need for it versus, you know, like you said, you read a book and it says you should give them antibiotics every month. Well, I think even the people that read that and believe it, after a while, it hits them enough in the pocketbook. They're like, man, I got this doesn't seem right.
Right.
Nobody's losing this much money on poultry or whatever else without stopping and saying, I gotta check this. This doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense to lose this much money on doing your own meat if it's so popular.
Well, and the thing that we know is preventative anything. When it comes to pharmaceuticals, anyway, you know, there's a lot of things that are preventative, right? Exercise and fresh air and clean living. But when you get into pharmaceuticals, I am not convinced in most cases that prevention is actually worth anything. What we know is, you know, they tell you to deworm or, you know, to treat with different antiparasitics quarterly, and in some places it's monthly, in some places it's yearly. And what we know is parasites get more and more and more resistant. Our drug use has to go up more and more and more. And so it's the same thing with antibiotics. Like, we're just breeding a bigger problem.
I think you can watch that. Just watch TV at night.
Oh,
My
God.
goodness, God, the drug commercials scare the hell out of me.
They do.
We watched. There was one last night. I can't even remember what it was, but it was like the side effects was stroke, diarrhea, aneurysm, heart attack. And I just thought, what are you trying to cure? What is the problem you're having that like basically 17 ways to die is the side effect? And you might consult your doctor if you've had an aneurysm. And it's like, you should consult your doctor if you've had an aneurysm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, drug commercials are scary. And look, we are not doctor people. We don't go to the doctor. I don't pretend to know everything, but you better believe if there's a natural way to treat anything, I am all over it. There are plants and there are things that we can do that are, you know, antimicrobial, antibacterial. And look, y'all, we're going to have to start doing some of this. We're really going to have to start looking at it. Oregano oil is good for a lot of stuff. Honey is good for some wounds. You know, like, I've always been a little scared of pharmaceuticals because the side effects are long, right? The list, if you get anything anymore, and like even aspirin, read what the possible side effects, for Christ's sakes. But what stresses me is in those moments, those honest moments that you actually need it, like the vent disease or when I got Bordetella. There is no natural cure for either one in rabbits. There's nothing. And you better believe I scoured the internet for anything else we could do first. But there wasn't. There literally wasn't. And why should we have to? In this current modern age, right? We have these things which should be tools when we legitimately need them. I am tired of being punished for some people and some parts of an industry over exploiting those. We get the pinch, but they're still going to continue to do it. You know, the Tyson chicken farms are still going to be able to medicate if they get whatever that comes through. The cattle producers are still going to be able to. It's just you and me that can't. Like if a big dairy farm gets a case of mastitis, they're going to call the vet that they use for everything and they're going to get the drugs they need. You and I are going to have to move heaven and earth to find somebody. God help us if you can find a vet that will make a freaking ranch call anymore. Or, load up old Daisy May and try and drive her God only knows how far to try and get in, to try and get a veterinarian to look at her. They literally make mastitis test strips. So you can test at home and know darn well what it is, but you're not going to be able to treat it if that's what it is, not without help, not without a veterinarian that wants to sell it to you. And everything through the vet office for drugs is more expensive. Everything. I bought a thing of penicillin years and years and years ago from a veterinarian that charged me like $35, and that's when it was like $9 in the store. And so I was like, wow, really? But yeah, he's got his bills to pay, right?
That's right. They got facilities to pay for and people to staff and
yeah, so it's super frustrating. And like I said, I'm not telling anybody to go stock up because look, things are expensive, and if you don't use them,
well,
then it's a waste.
It would be okay if it was a shelf life of 25 years. It'd be like, yeah, crap, a couple vials, you might need them.
But some of them aren't.
But if it's a shelf life of 2 years, whether you open it or not, I mean, that's just straight frustrating. I mean, it's an insurance policy you may never need. It's a brilliant plan if you need it within the time that it's good, right? It's like, oh, you are brilliant. You saw the problem, you stocked up, you needed it, you had it, you used it, done.
Yeah.
It sucks if you buy it, you don't use it in the expiration and it goes bad. It was a good insurance policy that you didn't ever have to cash in. But on the opposite side, if you need it, you can't get it, you're not going to get it. You just, sit down and pray every night that your cow is going to live, or your goat or rabbit or whatever else.
Yeah.
Or you just sit back and be like, well, here's the hospice version of homesteading. You basically make
strong will survive.
The strong will survive, and make them comfortable until they're not comfortable anymore, kind of deal.
So this is going to lead me into my next little tirade. Which
wait, the next one?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's all part of this. And that is personal accountability, right? So I feel like we are being nanny stated to death. I don't have any rights to ingest what I want to ingest anymore. If I want to go eat my cow that I've treated with penicillin, to hell that should be my right. I don't want to, but that's my right. The laws right now are so restrictive on what you can do with selling meat anyway, that this is, I'm trying to think of the words on how to say this exactly, but I can't exactly go selling meat to hardly anybody anyway. It's just the way that they've got it. It's so controlled. There are so many rules in place, and they vary. Every single state has a different rule and a different law on what you can do. But it should be my right to be able to say, yeah, I medicated that cow and I followed the 30-day withdrawal and I chose to eat it, and that's my right. Just like in raw milk or like anything else. I am absolutely tired of being pinched down to the point of, there are days where I honestly wonder, is it even worth it anymore? Because there's feed shortages and there's hay shortages, and they're restricting our water in the Western United States. And now we can't get drugs when we actually need them. And they're already, if you read the stats, we're suffering nationally from a lack of veterinarians as it is. So now, knowing that, there are lots of farming communities that don't even have a vet. So we are being told now we have to go to a vet for everything. That may not help us because they don't know anything about the species that we have. But they're taking away our ability to help ourselves entirely. What is next? What is next that they're going to take away? They've already taken away my ability to, sell what I want to sell off my farm. If I want to sell a butchered rabbit to Joe up the street, I can't do that. It's against the law. So if I get vent disease in the rabbits, I can't go down to the store to buy penicillin because that's against the law. What else are we going to have?
Well, it's not against the law. You've got to go through the system.
Well, yeah, they can't sell it to me. It's the law. They can't sell it to me over the counter.
Well,
Only
I
a
was just
veterinary
thinking
can.
if we were going to sell butchered rabbits, because, you know, I mean,
We can't.
well, I know, but if we went through and got a USDA certified kitchen, we could do such things. But we looked at the cost of that, and it was, I mean, this is years ago before the insanity of what we're dealing with today. It was like $10,000. And we were trying to look at it in like a mobile trailer that would be dedicated to it and everything. And it was like, you'll never recoup that cost. You can't produce enough volume with 2 people to get a $10,000 investment back.
Well, and how many outbreaks of salmonella and listeriosis and all the rest of the crap have you ever seen come off of a small farm?
Well, I don't think, even if it did, it would never make the news because it's not going to hit it's not enough volume to hit enough people to cause a big enough problem.
Right. So why is this even a conversation? I don't even understand why the USDA or licensing or anything else is involved. Look, if I am a consenting adult, I can go do whatever, they'll let me buy poisonous cigarettes and pump that crap into my body. They'll sell me all kinds of grades of pharmaceutical crap. Anyway, but I'm diving off into my own frustration. I think once you get the ball rolling,
the problem is that
you.
word consenting.
Yeah.
That involves you having knowledge and accountability.
That's true. Joan said, "Oh, I took a short course on rabbit butchery. Insane requirements." Yeah. What's weird to us, so we're in Oregon, and there are lots of states where you can butcher rabbit and sell it. Well, it falls under the poultry exemption. In the state of Oregon, it doesn't. And I actually talked to the guy at the state trying to find out what we could do to do it ourselves. And they consider rabbits to be a more dangerous, more likely contagion or cross-contamination risk than chickens. I have butchered tons of poultry in my life, tons. But I can butcher whatever poultry in my yard I want as long as I lay down a tarp and put a canopy up over the top of me to keep bird droppings off and ground contamination. However, I'm going to do that.
Well, don't drop it on the ground.
I guess if I'm throwing the chickens around, but anyway,
they're slippery. You drop them on the ground.
I can do all of that and sell to whoever I want. And if you've ever butchered ducks or geese or chickens, you know that the contamination risk
is not outside, it's inside.
Is high, right? I mean, they're even in the cleanest of situations, they tend to void their bowels after they're killed. And anyway, it's a dirty situation. Running a scalder and a plucker is a dirty situation. There is far more risk of cross-contamination when you're dealing with poultry butchering than you will ever get with rabbit. I mean, like, you would have to drop the rabbit on the ground and roll it around for a while, maybe, to get the same level of potential cross-contamination as you'll get with poultry. But in the state of Oregon, they tell us that it is far more likely to make somebody sick to butcher a rabbit and sell it, and that's why they don't fall under the exemption.
Well,
that's insanity.
I think a lot of this is people, and I'm just going to use the term policymakers, the ones in the capitals or wherever else who are coming up with these rules. They are not based in agriculture or food production on a small level or anything else. They don't have the knowledge.
And they don't care.
Well, they don't, because their job is to not have the knowledge. Their job is to not, I mean, how often have we seen that? That the bills that go through the Washington, D.C. that are 4,000 pages long that they get 28 seconds to read through, sign it or don't.
Right.
And it's like, well, could I actually read some of this and do a little bit of information? Do I make it a concern? No. Vote or don't.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that happens on the local level too. Even here, I would bet that if we went to our county commissioners here, right, that are based in our local economy and everything else, if I asked them questions on agriculture,
They don't know.
they wouldn't have the answers because
Right.
they're not agricultural people in that respect. Some of them have grown up here. I know one of them came out of TV production, was a TV personality that before that person went into a local county commissioner. There's other business people. They're not agricultural business people. They're business people. And
Well, we've lost the idea. We've lost the idea in this country of what we used to have, and that was the people that were elected to help govern the people were of the people. They
right,
understood the communities that they came out of because they were from the community. We don't have that anymore. We have career politicians that, I mean, half of them, if I walked them through my barnyard, wouldn't know what they were looking at anyway.
yeah,
They just wouldn't.
right.
Much less, is that a sheep? Is that a goat? I don't know. They all think rabbits are pets, and it's a disconnection that we have a lot of people making rules for us that don't understand and have taken away our ability to make decisions for ourselves, whether that's in what we ingest or what we treat our animals with, or for that matter, treat ourselves. You've now lost it, and it's not coming back. I mean, that's the thing that's so frustrating. It is not coming back. This is where we're at. So we're going to have to learn to adapt and come up with new ways to do things. It's terribly frustrating from my perspective, and I'm reading through these comments, and I know a lot of you are frustrated too. I don't know where to go from here. I'm not the one who's going to take $100 rabbit in for a $500 visit. Yeah, with the vet. I'm not, because I know what I'm going to get when I take it in there. I'm not going to get the level of care and the proper treatment that I should. I'm going to get somebody who will not listen to me because he's been to school or she's been to school. And I have a high school education. Doesn't matter that I've lived on the farm my entire adult life, and I know what I'm talking about because I've seen it all and done it all and helped 4-H kids and helped people around the world with stuff. It doesn't matter. So when this happens, I'm going to do everything I can from my end of things, but I am probably going to watch livestock die because I cannot afford to run things to a vet.
We just did that. We did that a week ago. We had to watch a rabbit perish because of the penicillin thing.
Yeah, just waiting on penicillin. A very simple, very easy to deal with drug.
That we were like, oh, well, we got to run to town and go get some penicillin. And we went in town and we had every store in town, and they were like,
yeah, we don't have it.
We don't have it. And it was like, well, are you going to get it? And it was like, no. It was a shortage last year, and then the state of Oregon just said, you're not going to get it, so you might as well just take your tags down. Because they didn't have tags. We're like, how would you not have this? It's like a thing. And they're like, well, you can go to the vet.
Yeah. Yeah, I could go to a vet that will charge me $500 and still not prescribe the right thing anyway.
Well, yeah.
Anyway. Well, that's my little rant on the whole drug thing. Like I said, I don't know what to tell everybody to do, or what to advise.
Well, the hardest part is, how many people contact, and I'm going to say her, it's not me, contact her for rabbit help. And now you've got to change the whole system because it was, we've made videos on it. How do you dose for penicillin or different things? And now it's like, well, you don't.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can get some topical and rub it on there, put the lotion in the basket.
Even that's not going to be available very. Joan, actually, yeah, fish antibiotics is a thing, and they're taking that off the market too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
it's
going away
across
too.
the board. Don't think there's something that's not. If it has anything related to food, if you can eat it commercially, doesn't matter if it's a fish, a chicken, a duck, a goat, a llama, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It is across the board, and it's an extensive list that I found earlier from the Texas Farm Bureau. That's the one that really kind of informed me a little bit on
They have the very best of everything I've read.
I looked up, and you can look up how I found it this morning to kick it off was FDA banning penicillin.
Yeah.
is how I did it. Just a Google search, and it brought up, I must have read like 10 different websites of articles looking through everything, and it'll take you a link to the FDA site, which is very hard to understand because it's all government speak. It's all lawyerville, but.
And Anita says California has had this in effect for several years. They
Exactly.
have. Canada has it. I think Australia has it. There's been lots of places that have been doing this.
The EU has been very heavy on it, is what I found.
Yeah. But look, I know a lot of people from California that drive to Nevada and Oregon to get drugs. So it's not really affected a lot of people because they could just cross state lines and go get it.
Right.
Well, you're not going to be able to do that anymore either.
Yeah.
So either cultivate a relationship with a veterinarian, or kiss it goodbye.
Or don't. There is no other option. You're going to have to go through the proper channels with a vet. There is no other option.
Yeah. Well, and so I was thinking about this earlier and I thought, okay, well, this is going to push a lot of us into a culling type situation, right? If you've got something that's sick and you know that it's contagious and you know that, say you get Bordetella will spread like wildfire through a rabbitry. You can technically get your dogs and cats to pick it up. But it'll spread like wildfire. So if you get it and you're pretty confident that that's what it is, do you just go through and cull? Because if you don't, you could lose your entire herd, because the odds of a vet letting you have enough drugs to treat an entire herd without looking at it is very slim, at least in our area. And that's if they can figure out what's wrong with them. So it's very frustrating. Very frustrating.
It is, because
Anita has a vet. Well, I'll tell you this. My sister-in-law is a vet tech. And I may have to get to know her vet a little bit. Because
she's like 2.5 hours
away. She's 2.5. It's cheaper to buy gas to drive 2.5 hours than it is to try and get a vet to look.
Today.
Well, that's true.
$5
that's true.
Again.
Well, and gas is starting to creep up again. So there's that too. But yeah, I mean, there are people who deal with vets often enough that, if you walk in and say, you treat my dog or cat or whatever, and I've got a problem with the rabbits, they may sell it to you. I'm not saying no vet will, but look, this is also going to be the problem. This is the problem today. And what I think is going to end up happening is in 5 years, they're going to figure out that this didn't do what they thought it was going to do. So they're going to start forcing the vets to track who they're selling these drugs to. If I had to guess, this is where it's going to go. And when that happens and the vet produces paperwork that says, I sold Anita a vial of penicillin and I don't have test results or anything else to prove that that's actually what that animal had, you may find out that they can't sell it to you anymore. Or that this is going to be the next phase of the restriction is they got to have documented proof that they've looked, doctors can't just typically prescribe whatever without some kind of proof. So right. I do think this is where it's going, which just puts more and more pressure on the little guy. And the Texas Farm Bureau in their thing, there's comments on there that's of other people saying this is really only going to hurt the small guy. This is really only going to hurt the backyard producer, who is the one who doesn't overtreat now. Right. So just kind of the way it's going to work out, I think. Well,
they're going after the major percentage of the market. We're not. We're such a small percentage. I mean, are we even on the radar? Because we're not truly trying to stay in the system. We're trying to get our stuff out of the system, and
Yeah. So Joan says, so I can buy antibiotics for myself, but not for my livestock. Not for long. Not for long. Not the bills that I'm seeing go through.
Exactly. Don't give them more ideas.
Oh, believe me, I've seen stuff written online that this is stuff that's already being looked at. That's been being looked at. They've been wanting to take antiparasitics off the market for years, and there's been pushback. And I figure at some point they're going to get away with that too. And like I said, especially after the whole ivermectin thing, whether you believe it helped with COVID or not, the fact is that it gave a whole lot of people in power the idea that, hey, that's the next thing we ought to go in and restrict. So I've seen bills pop up for all over the country, and the FDA even looking at it, that pretty soon you're not going to be able to do that. Well, not only does that hit us small backyard producers, right? But every person who buys a deworming product for their dogs and cats, because you better believe they take one off the market, they're going to take it all off the market.
Right.
So it's just going to be a cascading effect of they get the penicillin today, and maybe next week they get the
chewable dog wormer.
Yeah, and the week after that, maybe you're not going to be able to buy vitamin B complex. Like, where does it stop? I don't know. Maybe the quarter drug dealer will start carrying antibiotics. Lord, I don't know. Maybe that's going to be the next big thing. Everybody will stop producing meth because that, explodes, and start growing penicillin in their little meth labs.
I mean, it's just from mushrooms. That's where.
Well, it's a little different.
Yeah, I understand that, but it's chemical.
It is. It's chemical.
Why? If you could produce it in a bathtub.
I don't know.
Don't put it past
you probably
somebody.
could.
If you can produce it in like a bathtub, don't put it past somebody that they haven't studied it. Somebody somewhere around this world has studied what does it take to produce penicillin. And maybe after this, I'm gonna go look it up.
Because I'm such a dork about movies and stuff, I'm gonna use the quote from Jurassic Park. Life will find a way. You pinch people down far enough, they're gonna find a way around it. I mean, I've been looking for a side hustle. There you go, back alley penicillin dealer.
I'm looking for the side hustle that becomes the real hustle.
Yeah, anyway. I don't know. It's going to be interesting, y'all. That's all I can tell you. But if you have access to it, it might be a good insurance plan. Like I said, I got kind of forced into buying 2 vials. I did look at their website earlier, and it's still in stock. And now there isn't a minimum. So you can buy one thing, but you're going to spend, for me, it was $60 to overnight. And then it didn't get an overnight because it got stuck in the weather. But it's Western Supply Company, I think it was. It was out of Billings, Montana. They were literally the only person I could find online that sells it, that still has penicillin. It's $20 a vial for the 50 or whatever it is, the normal sized one. Yeah. They did a fabulous job at wrapping it. They were very quick with their shipping, but it's expensive. So be that as it may, if anybody wants to look for their own insurance policy while you're trying to figure other things out, I think it's good for like 2 years, 3 years, whatever. But I highly recommend them for the one time that I've purchased from them. And I got worried because it got stuck in a snowstorm, and I was like, it's not going to make it in 24 hours. And they said, don't worry about it. We've packed it with enough ice. And I am not kidding when I say that for 2 vials of penicillin, the box was about, that big. They had an ice pack that big, wrapped the holy bejesus out of it with tape and insulating bubble wrap. And the ice pack was still frozen when I got it at 2 days after they shipped it. So they did a great job. So if anybody needs anything.
I know I looked on Amazon earlier to see if they had it by chance, and
nothing.
You can buy it. It says it does require a prescription, which I thought,
yep.
How do you get that? I guess you must upload it, or you try to buy it and they somehow verify it. But.
Yeah, Valley Vet and some of the others will do prescription drugs. So yeah, you can do some of that. It can be done. If you want to buy the topical penicillin, which is storable at room temperature, I'm going to buy another thing of it just to have. It wasn't very expensive. I want to say it was like $12 maybe with shipping.
Yeah,
$15. Allthingsbunny.com actually had it, and I've seen a couple other places online. Western Western. My phone's actually live streaming. It's Western Supply Company, I think it was. But they're out of Billings, Montana. They have a very nice little website. I didn't have any trouble finding it. When I looked earlier, they still had it in stock. But yeah, I think it was Western Supply Company. I'm trying to think of the logo in my head, and I think it was WSC. Website's got like a red background, and it's a red banner at the top. Anyway, if you can't find it, send me an email, and I'll get you a link for it. srhomestead@yahoo.com, and I can get you a link for it. Because it, like I said, I literally went through 8 pages of Google trying to find something, and just happened to luck up, and they said they had it in stock, and I thought, no way, no freaking way, nobody has it. Valley Vet didn't have it, Jeffers, any of the supply companies, and they did. And I thought, okay, well, I'll add it to my cart and I'll pay for it, and they're going to tell me they don't have it. And instead I got a ship notice. I thought, hot dog, I actually found some. Now watch, I'll end up throwing it all away because I really won't need it. But at this point, I have it in case I do need it. So, and we've used it for stuff over the years. You know, we've had injuries, and
Western Ranch
maybe
Supply?
that's it. Maybe Western Ranch Supply. Maybe that's what it was. I thought it was Western Supply Company, but it's in Billings, and it's some kind of Western Supply. But like I said, if you can't find it, just email me. I have the link off my receipt. I just can't look at it because the phone's streaming. So, but yeah, I thought they were affordable they've got all kinds of stuff too. I was going to order in some oxytetracycline, LA200 kind of thing, but they ship it separate because I thought, well, if I'm paying $60 for shipping, but they ship that kind of stuff separate because it doesn't have to ship in the cold pack and isn't actually supposed to get that cold. So you can probably find some of that still in town. Like we still have LA200, and I bought a thing of biomycin and something else that you can still buy in town. But not for long. It's going away in a couple of months. So
yeah, in June.
Yeah, keep that in mind. And kind of is what it is.
That's all I got.
That's all I got too. I mean, there's not much. If anybody's got questions, feel free to type them on in, because that was all I really have.
What are you going to talk about in 2 weeks?
Yeah, in 2 weeks. Anybody got a topic they want to talk about that I don't have to get all anti-government and whiny?
Here's a funny one for you.
Uh-oh.
Waiting to see if anybody's going to put in there. We got contacted by a producer.
Oh, yeah.
For Homestead Rescue to see if we would be interested in applying for Homestead Rescue for the Rainies to come out and help us.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody watches Homestead Rescue. So I'm a big Marty Rainey fan going back many years. I watched him in Ultimate Survival Alaska and some other stuff and loved him. He desperately needs to keep his shirt buttoned up a little bit more. Somewhere somebody will tell him this, and I'll.
There are women out there that love that open shirt thing, and it's not here.
But they came out here 4 years ago or so
to a local, and
they did somebody on the other side of Sprague River from us, and it was such a crock. I was so excited about this show for the longest time, right? And we casually, like, I've sold her stuff over the years, so we casually know her, and it was just such a crock. The whole thing was just such a freaking crock. And you know, they go through this whole thing, and she's crying on camera of, oh, I just want to get my homestead going so I can quit working. No, she's still working at the same place. In fact, when her episode aired, she was on a cruise in the Caribbean, I believe.
Something like that,
yeah, it was such a crock. I was so sad. Joan, stay under the radar.
We declined.
Let's just be upfront. We totally declined it because look.
And I just did it this morning. It was like 4 or 5 days later. We tried how to decline politely. And,
right.
And Nikki's like, I'll take care of it. And finally, after 4 days, I was like, look, I know that you can't politely tell this guy no, and so I just sent him, just like, we're pretty okay. We've got our infrastructure set up.
The thing is one, I'm not capable of crying on demand.
I can though.
Yeah, Kanan probably can.
I can.
Although I have cried once or twice to get out of speeding tickets. But that's been many years ago. I used to be far better at it. But we kept talking it through, and I'm like, what on earth could they possibly do here? Like, we already have a garden. We already are off grid. We already grow all of our own meat. Like, what in the world could they? And what killed me about it is it was obviously somebody that just kind of went through and found every homestead he could find and on Facebook, because he was hitting a lot of people on Facebook, and no research, because it says, I feel like your homestead's going to be a good fit, and it's like, based on what? Based on what? What are we struggling at so badly that we need an intervention? Well, so I was a little offended. I'm not going to lie. I was like,
but really, we sat for like 3 days kicking around ideas like, what could we have them do?
I really would like somebody to come fence the rest of my property. And I kept thinking,
we thought, okay, can we spin it off that we've got predator problems and we need fencing put in?
But we don't.
Could we, don't mind all the solar panels and the batteries and everything else. Don't mind all that. We, could we?
We have an actual house.
We have a house and don't mind that there's a Corvette in the garage, and don't look at any of that stuff.
Or attract, like, we legitimately
couldn't invent anything to really make it like
backyard meat. Sounds like an insult. I felt a little insulted.
I didn't. I thought it was funny.
He thought it was funny. I felt insulted because of the fact that the guy said, I've looked at your stuff and I feel like you could be a good fit. And one, I knew right away, bull. But I thought, where do I look like I need that much help?
It's after, because we have 2 YouTube channels, I can just tell you how many times we get hit with offers of, I've checked out your page, or I looked at your something and you'd be a great fit. Like, here's the thing. The other day on my car stuff, I got a message from an ambassador from a dog clothing.
Yes, we've gotten a lot of those.
We have on the Homestead, which I get, but I got it on my car channel. They wanted me to hawk their dog T-shirts somehow.
See, I was really excited
my car
about this
stuff
because I really thought, how incredible would our LGDs look running across the field in some sweatshirt, T-shirt, hat.
I want them to have capes like super.
What happened in the ones that we have in pairs is one would be trying to run and the other one would be trying to rip the thing off.
No doubt of that. It would be trying to choke the other one with it.
But honestly, as the coyotes get more familiar with the dogs, if we send one of the dogs out with one of those little doggy caps that are all rhinestoned up, it might create a fear response of,
it might.
What is going on here?
Might. Yeah. Anyway.
We do. We get a lot of weird stuff.
We get a lot of weird stuff.
A lot of weird stuff.
Anyway, that was, but there you go.
So. Maybe they had a Batman costume and they were like, Batman Corvette. I don't know. We do. We get a lot of it. And I get it a lot if on the Instagram page, a lot of times I'll put a picture of the collies up and I get a lot of, like, instantly within an hour or two, it's dog shampoos or dog clothing or whatever.
Yeah.
Always wondered how legit the Homestead rescue was.
Well,
I've heard varying things.
The people on there are legitimately struggling. I'll say that. I think that they're legitimately struggling. A lot of their, and I won't say all of them, some, and I just base this off of knowing the people here locally that were on the show.
I've known 2 people that have been rescued there.
That's true, right? There was a couple. So a lot of times they really try to make you seem, I don't want to use the word pathetic, but
that's probably good though.
Just think of it this way. Reality TV is not reality.
Well, that's true.
And so they never show it in any of the clips, but there's always the amount of work done is always done by a team of people.
Yeah, like so the one that we had out here locally, they actually brought in an entire work crew because they're not licensed, right, in these different states. So what they do is when they go in, they actually hire a local contractor that can pull. They figure out what they're going to do ahead of time and pull permits if they need them. So they're doing this on the up and up. Sometimes on that show you get like there's that one episode where Misty electrocutes herself working on a light, and you see that there's actually workmen there. Yeah. The one out here, they had a team of like 8 different people from a contractor, and there's a scene where they roll in and they buy, they go to get some lumber or whatever from the one mill, and they rolled in with 2 separate trucks full of people. The guy that owns the mill was quoted in the paper later saying that he showed up with like 15, 20 people. On the other side of that, do the Rainies actually get their hands dirty and get out there and work? Absolutely. Yes, they do.
Absolutely.
When they show them out there digging and playing with excavators and all the other stuff, they really do. But they are not quite the miracle workers that are, they're not doing everything you're seeing in 3 days like they're pretending. There's a whole contractor group of people that come in and do the work.
The one that really got my attention was there was one, and it was like 2 or 3 years ago. And I think it was the family that was trying to do the big mud hut thing. They had tires around their house, and they were trying to fill it with mud.
Oh, yeah, the tire house.
Yeah, the tire house and going on. And there were like 50 people behind the scenes because the volume of work was so large. They had like 50 people. They were trying so desperately. And
they had friends and families and contractors and all kinds of stuff.
I think between friends, family, and contracted people, there were some like 80-something people working on this house in like a 5-day period. And they still, I think they got close, but they didn't even, the Rainies didn't finish it filming in time. And they ended up having to finish up the rest of the work. They concluded the episode with like 85% of it or somewhere in that range done. And then
I don't even remember.
There was a contractor that had to come out and finish everything because the Rainies had to move on to a different episode.
Yeah.
But it's real, but it's not like they're not miracle workers.
Right.
And so I think if you go back to the original season, you see a lot of their things that they can accomplish with themselves and maybe a couple extra people, but over year after year after year, I mean, it's just like reality TV. It's got to get bigger and better and flashier. And now they take on so much stuff that they're like, we're going to build you a house with a 3-bedroom, 2-bath and 17 barns, and we're going to fence in 17 acres. And we're going to do it in 2 days.
Well, like the one out here, like one of the things they do is they built her a greenhouse. Well, she already had a greenhouse, but what they wanted to do is they wanted to do like I think it was partially dug in.
Yeah, just half underground.
So they wanted to do, which I think would be great, but our water table, she's up on a hill. We're down in a valley, but I think a dug in greenhouse would be really cool. So that's what they wanted to do. That's what they did. So they basically took the cover off of her greenhouse and reused it on this other one, and then left her greenhouse frame with nothing. So her husband ends up turning it into a poultry shed or whatever. But there was a lot of stuff that, they had stuff that they pretended that they didn't have. And like she had just posted pictures a couple weeks before that of how her garden was coming across, and it was actually doing way better at the time than mine. And then they go out there and they make this big thing about how she can't grow food and all this stuff. And I thought, to hell you say, because I just saw her garden pictures like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and
they look great.
Yeah.
So some of it's fake, some of it's
misleading. I'll say.
Yeah, it's definitely misleading. It's TV. It's kind of what it is. Our meat pen show is in 5 days. I may need to hold them for 2 days. Any idea on how to keep under 5 pounds without losing condition? Not really. Let me think on that for just a second. You can. So rabbits will grow the most with protein. So what I would probably do is move them over to just hay. Just hay. They shouldn't lose too much. As long as they're eating, they shouldn't lose condition. What you'll get is that they'll slow their growth. So I would move them over to just hay and water. You'll drop the protein. That'll cause the muscles to pause in their growth just a little bit, but should keep them well fleshed, I would think. But yeah, I think that's probably the best thing. You must be like really floating close to 5 pounds if you're that worried about it. But yeah, switch them over to just hay because you're not going to have any digestive problems with just hay. And the big thing is with the sudden drop of protein, they ought to pause a little bit in their growth. It may not work, but that would be my best idea because if you pull their feed, they'll start to drop condition pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
I know people who will sometime dial the water back a little bit because rabbits won't eat if they're not drinking, but you don't want to cause hydration issues either. So
Yeah.
I would just move to hay.
Yeah.
4-7 right now.
I think hay would be okay.
Yeah, I would.
And just measure 'em. Maybe
I would do that.
I feel like at 2 days, you get to measure them once each day or once every 12 hours. I mean, if it's that close.
I mean, rabbits, especially fryers around the fryer age anyway, will put on weight like stupid fast. I've had rabbits pick up 1/2 pound in a week. So it's definitely, with 5 days left to show, I think that's what I would do. I would move them over to hay and see if that slows them down a little bit. Gets them to pause without losing condition. And
and then like 2 days out,
if you're
maybe
doing
go back to it.
If you're feeding the barley that I've talked about for keeping their muscles hard, keep doing that on top of the hay because you won't run into any digestive problems.
Right.
But the overall drop of protein should kind of pause that muscle growth just enough to try and keep them under the weight. So it may not work. But yeah, barley, Boston oats. Yeah, you should be fine. Keep feeding that and just take the pellets away and just push them over to hay and you should be fine.
Yeah.
They will continue to still grow, but they should slow down just enough to make a difference.
Yeah, ease into it.
That's
it.
Yeah, Robin stopped in to say hi. Hello to Robin. And Elijah made it. Sorry you missed most of it. We were late too.
You can watch. That's the beauty of a live stream. If you don't catch it live, it goes on replay.
It does.
You can watch it later on and you can still make comments that we see. So, I think that's the coolest thing about it. You
can listen to my rants and raves and complaints.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I don't see any other comments or anything. So I guess we'll go ahead and end it.
Yeah, and if you guys have any questions you'd like us to work on for the next 2 weeks for another live stream in 2 weeks on Wednesday night, we'll try to do again 5 p.m. Pacific.
And I'll make some more videos for next week. I kind of dropped the ball with it this last week because this whole drug thing has been really frustrating. Yes, Elijah, I still have turkeys. I'm going to do more videos on turkeys this year. I have some weird stuff. I have chocolates, some palm crosses, blues.
Yeah.
And some black. Basically, they're the blacks that came out of my blue program. So I do still have some. I've culled a whole bunch of that stuff too, but
that's it.
Yeah, so that's it. If you have questions in the meantime or comments or whatever, you can leave them down or kick me an email. And I guess that's it. We will see you guys in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Glad we're able to do these live streams again. That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
But I will find some topic to rant and rave about, and we'll talk to everybody in 2 weeks.
Yep.
All right. Happy homesteading. Let's see if I can remember how to stop this.
Get the old Xer up there.
X.
Hit it once. There you go. Done.
Done.